America once ran on steel. Not just any steel. It ran on the steel made by one man, Andrew Carnegie. His company became so huge it produced more steel than all of Great Britain's factories put together. Think about that. One company making more of this vital metal than an entire mighty country. Carnegie started life in the poorest part of Scotland, in a tiny house with just one room, sharing a bed with his parents and brother. He came to America as a small boy with almost no money and quickly began working at age 13 for just $1.20 a week, yet he rose to control a giant part of the American economy. He became one of the richest men in the history of the world, with a fortune that would be worth hundreds of billions of dollars today. This unbelievable rise was not just luck. It was the result of a few simple but powerful ways of thinking and acting that guided his every move. These habits helped him build a steel empire that shaped modern life, but they also created great tension and even violence. They made him a giant, but also a figure of deep arguments. How did a boy from almost nothing create such an enormous business? What did he learn along the way, and what did he have to lose to get there? His methods were sharp, his vision was clear, and his focus on costs was total. Andrew Carnegie was born in Dunfermline, Scotland, in 1835. His family was not rich. His father was a weaver, making cloth by hand. But machines started doing this work, so his father lost his job. This pushed the family into very deep poverty. Young Andrew saw his parents struggle. He saw how hard they worked and how little they had. This experience taught him early on about money, about saving, and about the harsh reality of life without enough. When he was 13 years old, in 1848, his family made a big decision. They would leave Scotland and sail across the ocean to America, hoping for a better life. They landed in New York, then traveled to Allegheny, Pennsylvania, near Pittsburgh. This city was growing fast, full of factories and new chances. They lived in a small two-room house with a family of 8 people sharing the space. Andrew immediately looked for work. He got his first job at a cotton factory, changing spools of thread for $1.20 a week. It was long, hard work, sometimes 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. But he never stopped looking for ways to learn more and earn more. Carnegie's drive for more knowledge and better chances was clear from the start. After working in the cotton factory, he moved to a bobbin factory, then quickly became a telegraph messenger boy in Pittsburgh. This job was a big step up. He earned more money, about $2.50 a week. More importantly, it allowed him to be around important people. He delivered messages to business leaders and important figures in the city. He paid close attention to how they spoke, what they talked about, and how they made decisions. He memorized all the streets and important places in Pittsburgh. He learned how to use the telegraph machine himself, even though he was not supposed to. He made himself useful to his boss, Thomas A. Scott, who was a railroad superintendent. Scott saw the young Carnegie's quick mind and endless energy. This habit of always learning, always observing, and always trying to be useful was key. Scott quickly made Carnegie his personal telegraph operator and secretary, paying him $35 a month. Carnegie was on his way thanks to his smart moves and his habit of always learning and making connections. Working for Thomas A. Scott at the Pennsylvania Railroad was Andrew Carnegie's real training ground. Scott taught him how the railroad business worked, how to manage men, and how to think about big projects. Carnegie made sure he learned every detail. He would sit for hours listening to Scott make important calls, watching him solve problems. He saved every penny he could. He understood the power of investing his money. His first big investment came in 1856. Scott suggested he buy shares in a company that made sleeping cars for trains. Carnegie borrowed $500 with his mother, using their small house as a guarantee. He took the risk. The investment paid off very well. This taught him a simple but powerful habit: Find new, growing industries and put your money into them early. He then invested in oil wells and other small businesses. He was still working for the railroad, managing divisions, but he was also building a small fortune on the side. He saw chances everywhere. His ability to understand new technologies and put his money into them made him stand out. He was always looking ahead, always thinking about what would be big next. Carnegie was still working for the railroad, but he started his own side businesses. He saw that wooden railroad bridges were often weak and burned easily. He knew iron bridges would be much stronger and safer. So in 1862, he started the Keystone Bridge Company to build iron bridges. This was another big step. He saw a need and he filled it. He learned that to control costs and quality, you need to own the supply chain. This became one of his most important habits. He realized if he controlled the making of the iron, then the steel, he could make things cheaper and better. He traveled to England and saw the Bessemer process, a new way to make steel quickly and cheaply from iron. He knew this was the future. He left the railroad in 1865 to focus entirely on his own ventures. He started buying coal mines, iron ore fields, and ships to carry the ore. He even bought parts of railroads. This strategy, called vertical integration, meant he owned everything needed to make steel, from the raw materials in the ground to the way they were transported to the factories. This gave him huge control over prices and production. He hired the best managers and engineers he could find, people like Henry Clay Frick, and he let them run the factories, focusing himself on sales and big-picture strategy. By the 1880s and 1890s, Carnegie Steel Company was a massive machine. It was the largest steel producer in the world. Carnegie's factories, especially the huge Homestead works outside Pittsburgh, ran day and night. The Bessemer furnaces roared with fire, turning iron into steel. Workers labored in intense heat, shaping the metal into rails for trains, beams for tall buildings, and plates for ships. Carnegie's habit of cutting costs to the bone was famous. He told his managers to find every possible way to make steel cheaper than anyone else. He would even give rewards to workers who found ways to save money, even a small amount. This drive for efficiency meant his steel was always the cheapest, even if it meant paying workers low wages and demanding long hours. He always believed that pioneering don't pay. Instead, he would wait for others to create new technology, then buy it, improve it, and use it at a larger scale than anyone else. This allowed him to avoid expensive risks while still leading the market. He used profits to buy more mines, build more mills, and crush his competitors by always offering lower prices. His steel built cities like Chicago and New York and connected the country with more railroads than ever before. But this incredible success came with a heavy cost. Carnegie's relentless focus on cutting costs and maximizing production often led to harsh conditions for his workers. The drive for efficiency created deep tension in his factories. In 1892, a major conflict exploded at the Homestead Steel Mill, one of Carnegie's biggest plants. Carnegie himself was away in Scotland, leaving his chief manager, Henry Clay Frick, in charge. Frick was known for his tough, unbending style. He decided to cut workers' wages. The workers, who were part of a union, went on strike. Frick responded by locking them out and hiring private guards from the Pinkerton Detective Agency to protect the plant and bring in replacement workers. A violent fight broke out between the Pinkertons and the striking workers. Several people were killed on both sides. The state militia had to be called in to stop the violence. The strike failed, the union was broken, and working conditions became even worse. This event damaged Carnegie's public image deeply. He was seen as a ruthless businessman, even though he later regretted the violence. This showed the hidden dark side of his constant push for lower costs and bigger profits. After the Homestead strike, Carnegie slowly began to feel tired of the daily fights of running a giant business. He was already a very rich man, and he had promised himself years ago that he would retire young and spend his later years giving away his fortune. But he loved the game of business. The constant challenge, the violence at Homestead, however, made him think more deeply about the human cost of his empire. He was also getting older and wanted a quieter life, one focused on reading, writing, and helping others. He knew his company was at its peak. The steel industry was booming, but new challenges were always appearing. In 1901, a powerful banker named J.P. Morgan approached Carnegie with an offer to buy Carnegie Steel Company. Morgan wanted to combine several steel companies into one giant corporation. Carnegie, seeing a chance to retire with an even bigger fortune and fulfill his promise to give it away, began to negotiate. It was a huge decision, one that would change the American business world forever. J.P. Morgan offered Andrew Carnegie a staggering $480 million for his company. This was an unbelievable amount of money in 1901, equal to hundreds of billions today. Carnegie accepted. It was the biggest business deal the world had ever seen. With the sale of Carnegie Steel, Andrew Carnegie truly retired from business. He immediately began the work of giving away his massive fortune. He believed that rich people had a duty to use their money to help society, not just keep it for themselves. He called this the gospel of wealth. He spent the rest of his life funding libraries, schools, universities, and research institutions all over the world. He built more than 2,500 public libraries across America and other countries. He created the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, trying to prevent future wars. He gave away almost 90% of his entire fortune before he died in 1919. Today, the steel empire he built became the core of U.S. Steel, a company that continued to shape America. Carnegie's life shows how a clear vision, a deep focus on learning and efficiency, and a willingness to take calculated risks could turn a poor boy into a giant of industry, whose habits left a mark on the world that is still felt today.